The original story of Hansel and Gretel, which many of us are familiar with since early childhood, it's much, much darker than the sanitized fairy tale that we know and, well, love today. It wasn't my favorite story per se when I was a kid, but it was supposed to convey a lesson. Welcome to Check That Book, a special place where we get acquainted with arguably the most disturbing books ever written. And sometimes we take a look at the disturbing fairy tale origins. I'm aware there's quite a lot of similar content on the internet, specifically on YouTube, BookTube, but I'm just introducing you to the original concept of these stories, and I'm glad to know that some of you find this truly interesting and relaxing, even. I'm glad. You're welcome. This is a safe spot where we can discuss disturbing content, mainly books, pieces of written work, occasionally taking a look at a film adaptation. Well, with Hansel and Gretel, there's been quite a lot of versions to choose from. The story, first recorded by the Brothers Grimm in 1812, has disturbing origins tied to real historical events, including famine, child abandonment, child abuse, and even cannibalism. One of the likely inspirations for Hansel and Gretel comes from the Great Famine, which was in 1315 to 1317, and the Black Death, 1347-1351. In medieval Europe, during these times, food was scarce, and there are historical records of desperate families resorting to cannibalism or abandoning their children in the woods because they could no longer feed them. Hansel and Gretel's parents even consider leaving them to starve in the woods because, well, we have other mouths to feed. Unfortunately, this is the reality of the past in certain areas, and there is nothing fairy tale-ish about it. But how did this all turn out to be this concept of two kids in the woods? Basically, the premise was they wander about and they find shelter in the house of the Wicked Witch, who lures them in with candy. Well, the candy is, again, this is another subject, another kind of symbolism, which we'll talk about a bit later, but the Wicked Witch obviously wants to eat the children. And that's the idea, that's the beginning of the tale. And yeah, sure, learn the lesson. Don't, trust strangers. Don't take what's offered to you by a stranger by default, right? This is a cautionary tale in this regard, which, we all understand and teach our children, but let's get back to the darker aspect of the story. In the first versions of the tale, it wasn't a stepmother who convinces the father to abandon the children, it was their own biological mother. This change was likely made later to soften the story, as the idea of a mother betraying her own children was too horrific for some audiences at the time. The famous witch in the story, like I said, lures children into her gingerbread house and fattens them up to eat them. This echoes real-life folklore, actually, about witches and ogres consuming children, which was a common fear in medieval Europe. Some sources suggest that the witch could have been inspired by historical cases of real cannibals and child murderers. Well, medieval Europe wasn't the only place where things like this happened, obviously. We know quite a fair share of such cases throughout the world and the history of the world. So, yeah, that's the link to the bloodier, gorier tale. But the story of Hansel and Gretel shares similarities also with a much older French folk tale called The Lost Children. In this one, an evil woman, sometimes an ogre or the devil's wife, enslaves children and later kills them to eat. In one version, the children escape after murdering their captor, just like how Gretel ultimately pushes the witch into the oven. There's also a wee connection to child sacrifice and pagan rituals. Some interpretations suggest that the tale might have older, deeper roots to pre-Christian rituals, where children were sacrificed to appease deities or spirits. The act of Gretel shoving the witch into the oven might easily symbolize overcoming of dark pagan forces, and well, thusly again giving you not only a happy ending, well, sort of, yes, grotesque but happy ending. After all, you are burning a human alive. I mean, technically it was just an old woman who was starving, if you think about it. There was this probably crazy starving old hag who just, yes, resorted to cannibalism, and she obviously was completely out of it, but still a human being nonetheless. And well, Gretel burns her alive. Grotesque, gruesome, scary, but happy ending for the children, I suppose. This, for Gretel specifically, she overcomes this stuff, but again, this could easily have a religious subplot, and if you think about it, then sure. During the height of the European witch trials, which was 16th/17th century, many accused witches were old, poor women living on the outskirts of villages, etc. Communities weren't really accepting them. Those women usually lived in isolation and lived off the land. And well, I mean, just like the witch in the story, the main antagonist, the cannibalistic witch, this mirrors the possible real life events very well. After all, if you think about witch trials and witch hunts, what sorts of women were considered to be witches? Well, in real life, realistically, those were usually beautiful women with various kinds of birthmarks, moles on their, specifically on their face, which again makes me think that every other woman must have been convicted as a witch and labeled. And there were a lot of so-called signs that a woman is a witch. But yeah, in fairy tales, how do we see them? I mean, yes, they're old and isolated, but nobody asks why. And that's an interesting and disturbing concept on its own. Let me know if you would like me to do a video about witches and the history of witches, both in fairy tales and folk tales and in real life, and where has it gotten us. I mean, witches and warlocks and all that sorts of stuff, I mean, that's interesting on its own, but it goes into the fantasy genre. It goes into this fantasy category, which I don't really do on this channel because we're all about the disturbing and the psychological. But let me know if you would like me to take a bit of a different turn, because a lot of those things that are considered to be fantastical or fairy tale like, in folk tales are disturbing as well, and folk tales can be retold as a fairy tale, which Hansel and Gretel kind of is. So yes, even historians speculate on this story about Hansel and Gretel, that this can reflect fears of that time, fears of witches who were believed to steal and eat children. While modern versions of Hansel and Gretel end with the children escaping, reuniting with their father, and finding treasure even, early versions suggest an even bleaker fate. Some versions of the tale imply that Hansel and Gretel's mother, or stepmother, depending on the version, dies mysteriously, possibly as a result of the children's actions, linking their survival to supernatural justice, which again kind of links it to the religious version of the story, or should I say, religious view of the story. This tale, like many grim fairy tales, served as a warning to children about the dangers of wandering too far from home and also stranger danger. But its origins reveal a much more gruesome and unsettling reality. This was the story of Hansel and Gretel, which was not based on anything specific, which wasn't just a made-up cautionary tale, but a very well crafted folk tale passed on through generations and viewed from different angles and perspectives, which I find to be interesting, and well, at the end of the day, gives us both a lesson to learn and teach our children, as well as serving as a reminder that, well, times is harsh. Times is hard and used to be even worse. Maybe we shouldn't descend back into that dark madness. As gruesome as this story is, it always makes me think instantly about candy and all of the I don't know, it makes me think of the various film adaptations out there of this story, but again, now we know that this has a darker undertone and a darker origin. So there you have it. Before we wrap this up, I would like to remind you all of my own book, Misanthropically Inclined, which might seem a bit obscure, but that's the idea. You don't know what this has inside unless you come closer, look at the title, get even more questions conjured up in your head, and then read the book. Perhaps then you get some answers. In its core, Misanthropically Inclined is a poetry collection, but the hardback version has some hopefully interesting thoughts and ideas. Links for the book will be in the description down below, as well as the link to Not in Love with a Fairy Tale playlist. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like disturbing content, consider giving this video a boost in the form of an erect thumb, and make sure to subscribe for more. Take good care of yourselves, ladies and gentlemen, and I shall see you as soon as possible. Goodbye.